dang, my background. I'm supposed to look over here. What's up, guys? It's your boy GRC. How is everybody doing? This is incredible. I'm excited. You know why I'm excited? Because I like something engages inside of me that makes this seem like work, but it's very enjoyable to me. So I like to do both work and enjoy myself at the same time. And that's why I get to talk to guys, open-minded guys. And I don't have to guess whether these two men are open-minded before I get involved in the conversation, which is generally my whole conversations with people is like, is this dude like even in the ballpark of understanding? Anyway, we're talking Icosa, Hedron, HSI options, poly, game theory, strategy, preparation. Okay, that's it. That's what we're talking about, period. End of story. Let's get some DeFi proof. Let's bring the boys on. 1 minute, 8 seconds. I want biceps all over the chat. Okay. And I'm dropping the link below, guys. Please retweet it if you're in here. That would be awesome. Don't forget, DeFi proof is the GOAT. Let's go.
You already know what time it is. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. 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 Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hex and I'm making a state. Got me some hedge on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way. Crypto in the morning. 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 Crypto in the morning.
Dang it, I forgot. Let's just boom it. Hey, guys.
Man,
Hey.
good to see you.
Maxim,
Yeah.
let me introduce everyone so we can just get to it, because I've watched Maxim plenty, but we've never spoken. So it's just to hammer it out really quick. Me and Sam, partners on Crypto in the morning here, 11 a.m. Eastern, every single day. And then when I need to get the scoop on Icosahedron, I either go to the Icosa chat and this man's in there, or I go over to his YouTube channel, and he usually does really dense, chill vibe, non-biased information, which I can just listen to while I chill. And then I'm starting to ask people, hey, will you please come on my show? Hey, I want to talk about, because I get one subject in my head, I can't get past it until I get past it all the way. And I asked a bunch of people, you want to come on? We've talked for a little bit. Nice to meet you, man. And nice to have us all sitting here. And if you don't mind introducing yourself, and it would be helpful if you kind of told us, like, kind of quickly, like how you kind of even got involved, because it's a little nuanced pocket in the world. And just Maxim, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. I have a YouTube channel, Maxim Broadcast, and I really started pushing my channel hard when I saw a Icosa contract coming out, and it's been a lot of fun talking through Hex, Hedron, Icosa, and other projects as they come up as well. And yeah, my Twitter is Won't Settle Media, and it's just kind of the same thing. Talk about all kinds of stuff on Twitter. But yeah, how did I get here? Followed Richard Hart since before Hex, and got into Hex very early and on the first day, and have been in it ever since. And kind of hiding in the background until this year, where I decided to try to make some content. And
Why did that change, Max?
Yeah. Why? Well, I think a lot of it is, if you have the potential or have some crypto bags, it's not necessarily in your best interest to go public. And so I was trying to be very anonymous, and I didn't even tell my friends, for the most part, anything about crypto. And I basically decided that YouTube was something I wanted to pursue a little bit more, and felt that being more transparent, just because I was kind of telling you guys this before, but authenticity is something I really value a lot. And I felt like the potential to be more authentic and provide more value was there if I was a little bit more transparent about who I was. I hope that that could give some perspective. It doesn't mean that anything I say is necessarily valuable, but to be able to show a little bit of my past, I think gives some people like, oh, wait, this guy might be worth at least considering listening to his explanations because he's gotten somewhere. And I don't want to pretend like I'm the best guy ever or anything, but I've gotten farther than some people. And I think that hopefully gives some perspective. I also think it makes it more interesting for people rather than just talking about random ideas, seeing an actual account, seeing me have something to lose. I think makes it just more of an entertaining process and adds a little bit more value that way. And it's definitely something I tried to think through. What's the downside of doxing myself? And I decided it was worth it. And we'll see over time if that was a really good decision or not. But in the meantime, I feel like everyone watching me has something to gain and I'm the one that has something to lose.
But to push back on that, how I think about YouTube and content creation, because I've been doing it for quite a number of years, is that it is a way to hold myself accountable to thinking about things in a deeper way or educating myself because of like I need to show up, right? And to show up, I don't want to repeat.
What Sam's saying is he'll never be employed by another human, so he likes to use it as like a tool for it is also being productive. Like kind of like I said in the beginning, Sam, like I like to do it because I'm having fun, but like somewhere it triggers work like allowance.
But on the doxing side of things, one of like the inspirations for a lot of videos comes from the people who watch. So like, yes, doxing, right? Like everybody knows my name. They see GRC, they see Maxim, right? But at the same time, what the audience brings is, first of all, their attention, obviously, which is tremendous. But then they're like, hey, you were talking about that one thing. And they ask these insightful, awesome questions. And those questions allow me to develop myself and grow at a deeper, faster rate. So I definitely enjoy those.
I agree. I also like part of my thought is I'm already thinking about this stuff. Like I really don't post videos about stuff that I'm not already thinking about. Is I don't approach content necessarily from what do people want to hear, which I think a lot of people go that route. I go about it, what am I already thinking about? Because I think my ability to maximize my time is better. Like I can already put value into what I care about, and it should be better content because it should be more thought out. So it's a win-win. And
it's a scaling phenomenon. That's what I want to call it. YouTube really is a scaling phenomenon, not because you can become super famous or anything, but because you can work, study, scale, and interact with users at the same time. I tell Sam all the time, hey, everyone wants us to do a Twitter stream, blah, blah, blah. Get your notebook out or whatever laptop you're using and sit here with me if you want to chill and listen. And, sometimes I'll get 100 subscribers from something like this. And it's not really because I'm like actively, but this is truthfully what makes me feel excited when I wake up. But I have to kind of cut because we will talk like this for 45 minutes. I guarantee it.
So let's transition into Icosa and Hedron and everything. Yes. I want to hear your sentiment before we dive into some of the details. Like it appears to me that because the time frame of 90 days is long enough that people are so myopic, right, which is just short-sighted, right, that they focus on what's in front of their face today and they're not thinking 90 days out, where that 90-day mark starts in less than 2 weeks, right? But it seems like the sentiment has dried up, but I don't know if, like, you've got a different point of view. You talk to different people. So what are you feeling? What are you seeing about that?
So am I seeing the sentiment die up? Is that what you're asking?
Right. Yes. Or because you're paying attention to different things. So you could just be like, Sam, you're not paying attention.
Yeah. So I'll just slide mine in here just to give you this because me and Sam talk about this. I see people not speaking on the matter.
Not speaking about the HSIs and
it's just the whole thing. Whatever that thing is, when people start giddying up about stuff, and I'm not saying, Alex could be a lot smarter than me sitting right here at this moment, hypothesizing this. So I hate to undercut anything, but I will say, I think more excitement can be good. And I think guys like me, I'm excited about it, man. I call people, I'm trying to talk to some people just like, hey, whatever, because it's about waiting. But sometimes that waiting is the greatest opportunity in history. So
yeah, that's an interesting question. I've observed that other people talking about this assume FOMO for the HSIs. And I'm kind of with you guys in that I don't see FOMO right now. I do actually think that Poly may be helping the FOMO. I think they're going to draw in people that probably wouldn't otherwise be focusing on this, and I think that's at least in that particular aspect, that's a good thing. But I've kind of been skeptical, and I still am, that there's going to be mass FOMO during the HSI liquidations. So many people have said that they're going to go, for example, over their, like the HSI value is going to be less than the value in Hedron that is given. And I'm skeptical that that's going to be the case.
So you're saying that you've heard that some people think that they're going to bid higher than the cost of the actual HSI?
Yes. I don't want to name names, but I could. I just don't
Is
know.
Is that a move to? Is that a way to move on the supply in like a different way?
No, it's a way to go bankrupt. It's a foolish thing to do, is what it is.
But I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, the people
at a premium. That's
absolutely.
That's
and just to be clear, the people that are saying this are not. They're actually saying the opposite. They're saying don't do that. But they're assuming that, and I understand. Like, they're not dumb people. They're like, this is going to be the new shiny object. The HSIs are going to be the new thing. People are going to see it. Short-term thinkers are going to be like, let's take advantage of this, and they're going to go FOMO in. And they're usually saying, don't do that.
Right. That was a good way to preface that, because that makes a lot more sense now. Like
that's their thought.
You were kind of like telling us what we think probably will occur from what we see in general FOMO terms. But
yeah,
you hear that, you see that.
I see people warning against it because they assume that's what's going to happen. And so far, from what I've seen, I don't actually see very many people overly excited, just really waiting to just dump their Hedron in for these HSIs. To me, it's speculative. Like, I don't know what emotions are going to hit people once they actually start, but just so far, I don't feel that from people. I don't feel this, like, I really want to get the hex in those HSIs. I really want to just give up all my Hedron for it. I'm seeing kind of the opposite. I see a lot of people like, I'm probably not going to participate in them. I'm just going to stake and get the yield. And I think I'm kind of seeing more in reality talking to the people on a more conservative approach than a FOMO. Although the way FOMO tends to work is people get excited when it happens sometimes. And so I'm not really pretending to be really confident on what actually is going to happen. Selfishly, I would like to see FOMO because I'd like to see more Hedron burned. And we have a lot of Hedron.
That's exactly what we all like all of us bros over here have been hoarding Hedron. And I have a lot of bags, different coins. One of the ones that scares me to death to press the sell button on is my liquid Hedron.
Yeah, me too.
I'm scared to death because I'm like, the floor is so close, but the ceiling's so far.
Right.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting. I do feel, though, I'm trying to like put myself in other people's position and ask myself what I would do, if that makes any sense. What I try to put myself in a whale's position or in the big player's position. And you can see certain accounts don't appear to be sold on the long-term idea of Hedron, for example. And some of them are bigger holders. And if I was them, I would look to the big HSIs to sell Hedron. And it's going to be a really interesting time. For what it's worth, do not consider that a negative. I think if they sell during the big HSIs, because they perceive the incentive to sell then is because they think the price is going to be higher because they expect demand. If they sell, then to me, it's a long-term win because more Hedron will probably be burned than otherwise, because the value of Hedron versus the HSI should be lower if big players are selling. And the long-term effect of that will probably be positive because it probably end up burning more Hedron than otherwise. It's going to be a really interesting time. There's so many things that can happen, and
Sam, what are you thinking about right now, Sam? Like, what? Like, I mean,
that was an interesting point. First, on your point, Maximum, if I'm a whale, I could go through and sell NFT right through the contract, or sell the HSI through the contract, but I could do it at such a large amount that nobody else is really going to want to participate, and that I could buy it back myself using Hedron that I don't want to actually carry, if your sentiment around whales preferences related to Hedron is accurate, right? Because then I could buy back my own stake potentially at a discount.
Yeah.
Because if it's a large enough number of T shares, right, and say it's 160 grand, right, there may or may not be enough people participating for this to get eaten up, right, or have the capital to do so, right? The people who have the capital may or may not be paying attention to this because they're doing other stuff. But this way is a way for me to sell my Hedron without selling it for within like an LP pool with a range order, and buying back. You're like, okay, cool. I actually want Hex.
Yeah.
You can buy back your thing to get rid of your Hedron.
Right. So I think you're right. Like that. What I've seen from some whales is they don't seem that smart. Like they're not. They don't. I've just noticed that. I mean, whales are individuals, and some of them are very clever, put in lots of thought, understand the contracts, and some of them don't want to take the time. And I feel like there's a subset of bigger Hedron accounts that played the Hex game, got the 10x multiple on Hedron, and don't really care. They see the Hedron as a free money, basically, and they just are saving up their massive amounts of Hedron and just looking for opportunities to dump it, basically, or play the market. They're not actually playing the contracts. I think what you're saying is right. Like that would be layers deep. If I was smart and thoughtful and actually wanted to use the contract, then that might be a great way to do it. I think there's some accounts that we can kind of see that aren't really they don't appear to be doing that. They're just dumping when the price goes up, basically. And I'm expecting that to happen. I
think a lot got sloshed over in that little mini Hex pump. Like, I think that little mini Hex pump got people scared to death. They're like, yeah, I thought Hedron would stick with it, but I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
And then they all slosh back over. They're like, Richie's the best. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to note. And I want to talk a little, and I'm going to let Sam go, but that regurgitation of whale money is something that, I pay attention to all these liquidity pools to a degree, more so the number. Like, I just pay attention to that dollar amount a lot, that ratio, as I look through everything. And I worry a lot about false information via just like a very small group of people that kind of make it seem like it's a large group of people. But in this case, it's a little bit different because Alex from Hedron is a little bit of a wizard. Like he likes to make things move in funny ways. And I think he thinks about a lot of these social implications beforehand. And I think he makes it beneficial in a lot of different ways. Like, so I just want to keep it super open. But as far as the contract, as far as everything else, I forgot what I was saying. Sam, go ahead.
Thank you. I had a thought here that I wanted to get your opinion on. Because I know you talk about Hedron a lot, because one time I was in the kitchen and I was like, let me see if other people in the last week are talking about Hedron to get a gauge of like the creator mindset. Like, is it exciting enough to have people who have a cost, whether it's just their time, right, and or if they're paying somebody to help with the create content, it is a step further than doing a tweet, right? Because it's right. Cumbersome potentially to create a video, and your videos came up. So what do you think about the LP pool with the SA LP just sitting there outside of the range? And what are your thoughts on that? Because it hasn't moved, it's still sitting there. So
can you explain that just a hair more for the people listening, Sam?
So
I didn't even know that. I didn't think of it. I never thought.
So Alex has, assuming Alex, right, has a bunch of liquidity that is put into a LP pair. I think it's USDC and Hedron, a boatload of it in a kind of slightly narrow range. And the price has moved outside of that, right, as it's come up.
Right.
Now, so most people will just look at DEX Screener and be like, oh, there's this much liquidity in the pair.
Right.
But that's a naive or like a foolish approach without like looking at the actual numbers, because you see that, like, say it's 3 million. Well, 1.4 million of that is actually outside of the range in there, which means that it's actually way lower liquidity. It can move greater. So I want to hear your thoughts on that whole piece. But also, do you think that liquidity is going to just be pulled? Do you think it's just going to sit there forever? Do you think it will be moved inside of the range? Because it will slow things down. If that, like, just chunk of change, whatever that dollar amount is, gets set on top of the price, so to speak, it's like going from running down the street to now being in a pool waist deep in water and trying to run as well.
I got to comment on this. One little quick part of that is that what I generally see with Hex, and which is different from much other stuff that I see, and maybe Alex had learned this from Hex too. Remember, he built on Hex. He was the first guy to ever do it, or the first one I was aware of. I don't know if anyone else did it. But they kind of do this liquidity game where they just pull it, let it pump, put it to the next price. When it seems like I literally watched the Hex price. I watched that ETH buy, and then I watched all that liquidity get pulled, and I watched that rate just keep moving up. And I was like, are these real buyers, or is this less liquidity? You know what I mean? Because it's very similar, because no one's selling actively at that moment anyway. They're not looking. So it's an interesting concept, a lot of these liquidity games that can be played. And I can imagine if the SEC had any, I'm not saying that this is illegal or anything. I have not a clue in the world. But it seems like derivative on derivative of something that we can't control with all this active liquidity. And I'm not saying there's any violation. I have not a clue in the world about any of that crap. I just don't. But it's a lot of movement for, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially if you're trading, looking at where the liquidity is at, makes so much sense. And the fact that Uniswap v3 allows plays like that it adds a whole another level of, I guess, potential understanding and advantages for the people that are aware of that. I don't know what Alex is going to do. I would assume he's going to do whatever he thinks is best for the contract, and I'm kind of glad that he doesn't move things a lot, because it would just, I don't know why, I would feel a little bit more like he's being a trader. And I feel like just having a relatively simple, straightforward mindset, we're going to do this, let's see how things react, learn over time, and then if there's a clear advantage to doing something, then acting. And I don't think he wants to spend all of his time managing liquidity, assuming he's the one that's doing it, which I bet he is. But
he does by himself generally, he mentions.
Yeah. And so I don't know, it's hard. I mean, you're right. If you could predict that, then you'd have an advantage to know that he's going to move at this particular time, because that's going to affect the ability of the price to move. I don't have currently a lot of strong explanations on what I think he would do right now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really could.
Yeah, but I completely agree that, like, that is something worth paying attention to. Like, that affects price. It's supply and demand, but the interesting thing about it is it's an interesting kind of supply. It's supply at certain price points, and that it affects the supply at other price points. And
what do we see with Alex is he's completely annihilating the circulating supply. Like, basically, Alex is a human circulating supply destroyer. Like, because that's what a lot of his things do. That burn rate is a lot what we're excited about, right? I think that,
yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about that supply shock. Like Hedron coming off the market, the liquidity pool, let's say, stays the same, but that Hedron being off the market pinches the circulating supply, making each purchase worth less Hedron per dollar if the rate was to stay the same. So it's a very interesting concept, watching these liquidity pools change. Wow, the price can sometimes, like, I remember Hex at the top, the liquidity was similar. Like at the top, the liquidity was similar to what it is at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's critical to understand, but that does not mean anything negative. These guys also have insight that I don't. So I think that's critical. Sam, you got
Next, what do you think about the impact on Icosa through this? Because,
Man.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on,
So through the HSIs, I feel that the Icosa parity is going to break to the downside. I don't know anything, but I would be relatively confident that's going to happen. And I'll try to explain why I think that more clearly. Just as an extreme example, there are some 10 million hex HSIs. If one of those people with a 10 million hex or a 9 million, it doesn't really matter, one of those bigger accounts, like a 10 million, for example, if they turn that in through the HSI buyback to Icosa, that gives them 300,000 Icosa. And the current non-staked or the current supply of Icosa is not even double that. It's 500 and something thousand Icosa. Like, one of those players not paying attention, basically putting it through the HSI and dumping the Icosa on the market will really massively impact the parity and the price of Icosa. And that is something I would like people to be aware of, because one, I think it's fairly likely that something like that's going to happen. Relatively big players or many small players are not going to pay attention, and it's not in their best interest to market sell that much Icosa, but we see that happen often. For whatever reason, bigger players just market sell every once in a while.
Is it that you notice the market sell more? Because again, I think the important thing to remember with Icosa in particular is that there's no liquidity.
Yeah.
So remember,
that's the funny thing.
So when
Everyone,
downside
yeah,
pressure,
you're right. There is not a lot of liquidity, in my opinion,
none.
for Icosa. And for some reason, I've said this before and people tell me there is, and I don't understand what they're thinking. But for example, like that's a relatively extreme example, but that's a potential reality that could happen during the big HSI days. And I think it just
But remember, that
shows
can be good on the upside, because let's say they destroy the price for pennies on the dollar, and then all us guys are like, "Oh, nice move, bro." We'll
yes, exactly. And I want people to be aware of this for a lot of reasons. One, it's in your best interest, because what I see happening right now is people, the average Hedron and Icosa person, these contracts are very complex, even for crypto, in my opinion. They're just barely keeping up, barely understanding. And I think people have just, on average, just started realizing that there's going to be a high yield in the Icosa staking pools. And they've recognized that the Icosa staking pool is less competitive. They can really only get in the Hedron pool and the Icosa staking pool. They can buy, of course, Wats's off of OpenSea, but a lot of people don't even consider that, and they're just so they can.
I gotta think about that too.
I think we should talk about that too.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, cool, a bunch of yields coming. And for example, I think if a trillion Hedron is burned, it will be about a 25%. You'll probably see around a 25% return in Icosa. If a trillion Hedron is burned in the first 30 days, you'll have about a 25% more Icosa than you did. But just roughly from my calculations. And people are recognizing, oh, this is a pretty good yield. Let's get Icosa. They're getting it now. And I'm saying that's great. That's fine. You do whatever you want, but just recognize there's a chance that if the Icosa parity breaks to the downside, is it going to be more than the yield? So are you actually at an advantage by buying Icosa now and just wait till the auction start? Wait till a bunch of people put their HSIs through the HSI buyback. The parity's broken. If the parity only breaks 25% and you thought that there was going to be a 25% yield, you already made up for it. You already got a 25% gain, not to mention the fact that you can then take your Icosa that you got off the market and then stake it for the remaining HSI days. And you could have the advantage potentially of a lower priced Icosa and some yield. And
I
Go
understand. I know exactly what you're saying. I wanted to transition one thing. Keep those stable. I want to be right on the same topic. Sam, I know you got something right in the tank. We got Sloth down below, but Sam, I want you to say your question real quick. I have to use the bathroom, and then right when I get back, I just have to pee real quick. But this is incredibly fun to think about. I don't know, maybe not
I
probably.
love it, man.
But all I'm saying is, guys, my advice, not financial advice, do your own research. Consider yourself that you understand Icosa very well before you purchase at this moment. That would be and Sam was kind of letting me know on that a couple days back, just because it wasn't on my radar really. He said, hey, watch out. But then I told him, hey, that big, 75% upside might give that a little cushion. Anyway, I'm going to use the bathroom. Be right back. Actually, let's just bring Sloth in because he's the goat. I'm so excited to have everyone here chilling. This is a good conversation.
Oh, what's good? How you doing?
Doing great. It's good to see you, Sam. Good to see you, Maxim. It's been a second since I've talked to both of you.
Yeah,
Hope
man.
You guys have been well.
Hey, I'm glad,
Yeah.
glad to see you here. I'm glad to have both of you guys on. This is a fun, interesting conversation, and who better to have that conversation with than you guys? So I appreciate you.
Yeah,
guys.
man.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Sloth, on the potential impact of these coming out? Right, we have the HSI auctions that are going to be sold soon. Plus, this, I think a lot of things that people also forget to recognize is that they think of this as a one-time thing. This is not a one-off game. This is a series of games that's going to continue to play out. Right?
Yeah.
We have
It's
65.
day one. It's day one of the start of the whole thing.
So what are your thoughts on the impact, given that this is a multi-series game, not a one-off game, and how this could potentially, right, hypothetically impact Icosa?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you guys were saying was right. If you had to put a probability on it, it would probably lean towards Icosa breaking its peg, just because we're for the first time. Well, yeah, for the first time, but also we have the potential to see a large amount of inflation come into Icosa because of people bidding on the HSIs who potentially got a deal on them. And so if they got a deal on them and they're able to sell it for more than they paid, then they're going to do that. The price goes down. Pretty straightforward. But the cool thing to counteract that is like you were saying, this is just day one. And so we have, HSIs have been daily going on the liquidation, are being sold for Icosa since day one. And I mean, if you look at hexmodel.com, like you can see how many T-shares on every day, pretty much every day, over 100 T-shares are going to be on a liquidation auction, like even like up until today. Like
Wow.
I'm seeing multi-hundreds, like 400, 500, 600s, like
Can you say that last point one more time? I heard that, but I didn't. What was the number?
Like at least like 100 T-shares pretty much every single day. Here, I'll pull it up on
Right.
hexmodel.com.
That's cool.
And then, so basically what that means is there's all this extra yield to capture. There is more inflation, so that may be more pressure on the Icosa price. But for those who have a long-term vision for the ecosystem, that is where the demand might come from to help the price get back to the ceiling and or fight to oscillate from the ceiling price to a discount back up. Because your ability to buy a discount on the market is directly correlated to your ability to gain yield for all these T-shares that are going to be sold on the liquidation auction. What
are both of your thoughts on? There's the we think of the arb point as like what you can pay for at Hex, but then it's slightly more abstract and heady for people to grasp that and to go through the process of doing that versus it's a one step closer to being able to capture by paying for the HSI and then just selling it to Icosa, dumping that through if it's profitable. Now, I see a world where it is at least plausible that there's enough downside pressure on Icosa where now, at least for long-term HSIs, the advance in Hedron provides a greater USD value by taking an advance to exit your position. And on top of that, you get the added bonus of if hypothetically you decide within the next 90 days that you want your shit back, it's in Sam's name to do that. And what do you think about that? Those two going back and forth. Max, we'll go first with Maxim.
Yeah, take it away, Maxim.
Crypto Sloth, you go first. I want to hear you if that's
okay. All right, so let me just rephrase the question just so I understand. You're looking at the dynamic between the redeemability of the HSIs for Icosa versus the advanceable Hedron that you could get, and then seeing like how people are oscillating their bids between these two potential valuations. Did I hear you correctly?
Correct. Right, because you
okay.
just to make sure. So if I have an HSI that I want to dispose of for whatever reason, I want liquidity, right? So I can dispose of it as in OpenSea, probably unlikely. I can dispose of it as an advance, or I can dispose of it with Icosa OTC. So in the liquidation process of this.
So there's a person who has an HSI and they're like, you know what? I don't think I can see this through all the way. I want to cash out, extract some value. You now have a couple options: the Icosa route, the Hedron advance route, and the secondary market route, like on OpenSea. And then you're basically saying like, what context would need to exist for people to go down each of these different routes is kind of what
and how those
So I think the Icosa route is probably it's definitely the most definitive in that you know how much Icosa you're going to get, but you're also 100% giving up the HSI. So it's like, do you want to 100% give up the HSI versus the Hedron advance where you at least have the potential to pay it back? Now the price may go up 10x and you're like, well, that's it. I'm out of the game. There's nothing I can do about it. Or there's another option, say like you only need 50% of the value of the advanceable Hedron. You make 50% of the payment. And now if it's a 15-year stake, you don't have to make a payment for 7.5 years. So maybe in that 7.5 years, you're going to be able to accumulate the capital to make the payment back. That's another consideration. And then the downside for the OpenSea way, the secondary market way, is are you going to find that one-for-one buyer who actually wants to buy that stake? Especially because like one downside on going to the secondary market like an OpenSea is that you lose the flexibility of staking yourself. So you're pretty much just going on there to like find a deal. And if you can't find a deal, then you might as well just stake on your own, because then you can choose when you want to end stake, essentially. I think I'm dancing around your question, but that's kind of like the initial thoughts that I had. Maybe Maxim, you can put a bow tie on that for me.
Maxim.
Yeah, I'm thinking through this too. I'm trying to. That's why I wanted to talk first. Is I'm trying to think if there's anything really valuable that I can comment on with that. I don't know. There's so many possibilities.
I want to comment one thing, and it's just that there's no liquidity in Icosa. Like, can I just comment that real quick so we can cut this conversation up a little bit? Because only broke plebs can cash out in Icosa right now. Wrecked, broke. If you want 30 grand out of Icosa right now, good luck, because you're going to crash the price to zero. And that's the God honest truth.
You're getting to what I've tried to talk to recently, Jim Rat. I completely agree, and I think there's a lot of ramifications, I think, from that comment and that observation.
Well, that's the thing. People are going to immediately assume that's a bad thing on my end. But the truth is, that could be the best thing.
Yes, if you take advantage
of it.
One
brother, one homie, one dude with 100 grand. One dude that's like Sam, and he's like, dude, I got 700 shit all over the place, dude. I love these guys. They're the best. And we're making money, yield, everything. Or Alex himself. Again, I'm just speculating here. I have no idea how the back end of this works. You know, since he just bought a warehouse with like, the seventh fucking warehouse he's bought in the last. I'm just reading between the lines really quick, guys. I'm sorry. This is how I think about a lot of this stuff. I think there is more support in Hedron and Icosa than anyone could cash out at any one moment. And that makes it lethal. That's the one thing that I think makes it lethal, because there's product market fit and low liquidity. And that's the thing. One dude with 100 grand on Hex will just get smoked. And that will be ripped right into someone's bank account from the liquidity pool, will be sitting there for the next until the guys start to make it run again. So I think it's critical to say that low liquidity is a bad mark. Like rich dudes aren't going to get in, but it could be the same reason you make super good gains if you're a newer investor. Sorry, I just had to rip that up. Like,
You're right though, because that if there is somebody that goes through and decides to sell an HSI, that has substance like that's more than like most people watching or one of us is going to do, or then that has a potential to, if they're trying to exit through Icosa, that has a potential to be like very, very negatively impacted on the price. On the ratio, like between the advanceable amount versus the amount you get from Icosa, right? So if somebody were to have an HSI or to purchase an HSI that is 15 years out, and they're they either have it or they're going to buy it through the auction. And if you do that and you get Icosa, right, then you can get approximately par value for what you put in there. But what happens if, like, I think a lot of us, I think that could be a very challenging time for Icosa, or a opportune time for purchasing over the next several weeks and or months as this kind of like plays out and the market finds the equilibrium here. But what happens when that price drops down below par value, where the advance on the HSI is actually more money to me in my pocket? Then is there a way for that to go back up above it? Or once it's down below what you can get, say Hedron does at some point get closer to that value in terms of price appreciation, right? Then you're at that point where they're like, it doesn't make sense to, and I want to hear your thoughts on that, both of you guys.
I like that comment because I haven't thought a lot about that, honestly. And that's a good question. I've been thinking the other way around because Icosa's at parity and Hedron's not. I haven't thought about the fact that what if Hedron goes up? Will that help, for example, the Icosa parity in some way? I like that question.
Well, it would in a way, because now people are extracting value not through obtaining Icosa or inflating Icosa. They're doing it through inflating Hedron, right? So like they're selling down the Hedron price by printing more Hedron, but instead of extracting value via the Icosa route, which would be selling the Icosa price down, now they're on the Hedron price chart and they're selling the Hedron price down. So that's how it would even out. Basically, the people who are extracting value are moving away from extracting it on Icosa and moving towards extracting it on Hedron, which then just starts the whole cycle, because a percentage of them at that point will default. HSI is on the liquidation auction, Hedron burned, supporting the Hedron price, Icosa yield supporting staking, which supports the Hedron and Icosa price, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so that's probably how.
That's a very good point, Sloth, because if that value, right now we see it in the opposite direction, like Maxim was just saying there, where it just makes sense to do Icosa. It doesn't make any sense to do an advance, right? But at some point, like maybe in the low, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I've been looking forward to that time, and I feel that what is needed for people to, for example, want to have, what is needed for there to be an incentive to borrow your Hedron? Well, I think the Hedron price needs to rise. That, like, it doesn't make sense to me right now. Even, it doesn't make sense to me to borrow right now because the value of the Hedron is so low relative to the value of my Hex. It's like almost meaningless. And I feel that if we can get the Hedron price to rise, it's actually going to perpetuate its own growth, its own value, because as the price rises in Hedron, not only does it continue to make sense to buy HSIs and burn Hedron that way, but it then becomes more valuable to then borrow against your HSI, which also burns Hedron. So now we've got two separate pieces of the puzzle burning Hedron, which perpetuates its own value. And then also there's more reasons for people to use the contract because there's more optionality and different functions of value. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping I would love to see in the 90 days coming right up here is, I don't know if we will. I don't have a good percentage chance, but I would love to see the price of Hedron rise relative to Hex, so those other use cases become more valuable, so that we actually end up burning probably more Hedron than otherwise, and that even just helps I think the price going up will help the price go up.
And don't you forget about the triple halvening on Ethereum. That makes everything extra bullish, right? Well, that's what we call in GRC world a little tap on the ass.
Yeah, I don't hear enough people talking about that, and maybe I'm in my own little hole and not aware. To me, that's the fact that Ethereum has like had the equivalent of multiple halvenings at once. The supply is relatively static, and the fact that Ethereum is the number 2 most traded cryptocurrency, aside from stablecoins, which in a sense don't really matter because they're stable.
Go ahead. My bad. Sorry.
But yeah, like if for example people think that the halvening of Bitcoin is a reason for crypto bull runs, I don't know why they wouldn't think that the halvening of Ethereum is a reason to not have a crypto bull run.
Well, it's because it's not marketed well.
Yeah, but in a sense, yes, it's smaller than Bitcoin, but it's a pretty big player, and I would be very, very bullish on crypto, except for the massive broader economy issues we have on countries raising interest rates right now is strengthening the dollar, and it's hard for things to go as far as they otherwise would. So we have these other pieces of the puzzle that are hard for me to quantify, like, okay, Ethereum going more deflationary, less inflationary is bullish, but how does that compare to these other things? And that's hard to quantify. But
insight on that, absolutely disgustingly bullish from GRC's point of view. I just don't. I think people are going to be shocked in the bull run. And I'm not saying right now, there's always going to be sellers right now. But once those sellers just evaporate off the face of the earth, which they always do when things are running right, they evaporate. There's no sellers. They're gone. There's no sell pressure. They all get the picture after, the first 180%. Like, they're like, damn, shouldn't be selling my bags. I have to call out all these super chats right now because they're coming in hot. And I want to, first I wanted to do, Fractal Shark sent, I lost it, but Fractal Shark sent me one for $10. Thank you very much. And then we have 2 from Toby 1. And the first one says, if you do the math, for some of these mid to upper level dolphins, they can make 100K a year just minting their Hedron at the current price. They have 10x multipliers. And my clapback on that, although very true and totally true, is that Hedron has sufficient liquidity. Hedron's liquidity is a hair different. Let's not get it twisted with Icosa's liquidity. I think in a year or two, you might see Hedron's liquidity at a way different range than you do now. So I think investors might feel that there was a little upward pressure, maybe hold on to those bags a little more. But good point for sure. If you do the math, my bad. Super bullish for Hex and subsequently all derivatives. People worried about OGs dumping Hex on their heads need to zoom out. We are all in this together. Yeah, I mean, that's cute to say, Toby, that we're all in this together, but that has nothing to do with the reality of the situation. We are not all in this together. And there will people that will repeatedly dump on your head until you get a clue on what the fuck's going on, until you get a clue, because that is the predatory nature of financial investing. Always. Sam, come on. People.
I agree.
That's the truth. They come at your throat, man. And I can't even be honest on the internet without getting clapped back from grown adults that are shilling like cheerleaders. And I'm just trying to have a good time with my buddies.
It doesn't matter if they're in this community or any community.
No.
There's smart people. I mean, what is a hedge fund, so to speak? It's not necessarily not all of them, but it's one way to seek information to manipulate the market in such a way where I can profit as the hedge fund manager. And let me let you guys into something here. Crypto market manipulation is legal. So you don't think that fucking happens? 100% happens. Because it's legal, where in the stock market it has to be called inside. You have to say you did research and have sources to say you did your research, right? So that they can cover themselves up. So they don't
you see legislation sliding right in there and changing things up.
Yeah, it could be a little challenging, but I want to ask.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's right. We'll go cover that in a second. I want to ask. So Icosa, right? We I think are probably in a consensus is it could be a little challenging, right? A little sticky on the downside over the next couple weeks, months, right? I think we all probably have a similar point of view on Hedron, which we can get to in a second. But how do you guys see this playing out with HEX? So, well, I'm just going to say it real quick, and I want to hear both of your thoughts. HEX W and HEX F, they came out, and I'm watching the holders on Etherscan. I watched holders on Ethereum 2.0 actually drop for several days. And so the idea was people were, I don't know if it was accurate, it seemed accurate based upon what I was seeing, but people were selling 2.0 at HEX, and they were buying W HEX and they were buying F HEX. And how do you think these auctions are going to, and I'm not trying to say that this is going to be the same effect. I just want to know what your guys' thoughts are. What do you think might play out? What do you think this could impact a positive way, in a negative way? Curious. Who wants to go first? Sloth, you want to take this one?
Yeah. I don't think it's going to do too much for HEX because all of the actions that would at least directly benefit HEX, particularly buying it and staking it at this point in the value cycle, have already occurred. And so now we're shuffling around the value based on the bidding of the Hedron. So the way it would help HEX is by the way in which it affects maybe the Hedron price chart to get it at the ceiling price and or above to trigger arbitrage, and or get more HSIs on the liquidation auction for people to obtain Icosa to capture some of the yield. So it's at this stage in the game, it's more indirectly pumping HEX versus at the earlier stages, it was more directly affecting the HEX chart. Now, whether that buy pressure from the system was sufficient to pump the price is a different question. But that's the momentum that the system was putting in earlier, and now we're kind of seeing the ramifications of that.
Peers.eth. Standard procedure, you probably make money in your second bull run if you're paying attention. I think that's really true, actually. I literally made so many paper gains in my first bull run that it makes me want to throw up every time that I literally wake up. I was paper gained, so I was heavy with the paper gains though. But seriously, I had no idea about liquidity. I didn't. I was just like, stake it all and fucking pray. That's basically what I did. And I'm also very legendarily known for ending a 5555 stake on day one of it with my own fingers. And that was when 5,000 HEX was way more money. It was like one of my first ones. I had no idea what I was doing yet. But anyway, I'm speaking about the OGs that catch heat as though they dump HEX. No one's catching heat for dumping HEX. They're catching heat for being absolutely completely biased and blind to everything else that exists in this world. Other than that, has nothing to do with dumping. Me and Sam think people that dump tops are lit. Like that's a good move.
I plan on doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think dumping the top makes you smart guy. So do all that top dumping, and just remember. But no, in reality, nobody cares if anyone dumps. OGs get heat because they have so much money in HEX that anything else that comes out, they would rather me be canceled than them read one white paper. That's the truth. That's CNN liberal-esque kind of shit. It's everywhere with everything. And I just want everyone to remember, some people just, me and Sam aren't going to stop. We're having a good time. We're learning. Either just watch or don't watch. I ain't asking for money for anyone. I mean, even if I was, just don't watch or watch. Like, whatever. Let's go.
Max, what are your thoughts on how these auctions and this activity is going to affect the price of HEX? Like Sloth was saying that there's the potential for positive here, but on the same side, and I agree, there is definitely potential for a positive. But on the other side, it's like also opening another door for people to purchase HEX without buying HEX directly, which could reduce the spread demand out.
Yes. So I think I agree with what Crypto Sloth was saying is that there was an incentive in the beginning to max length stake your HEX to get Icosa. And right now we're potentially seeing the current already max length staked HSIs come back through the system for Icosa, rather than incentivizing new people to continue to stake their HEX. And that's for what it's worth, one of the arguments I've heard from the Poly team saying why they are, it's an argument for why they're not buying HSIs is because, sorry, why they're not putting HSIs through the buyback, because they want to leave the incentive there for new hex stakes. It's an interesting argument. And like, I agree with them that ideally that would be the best, is if we had a ton of HSIs coming through the HSI buyback and they were all new hex stakes. We were continuing to pull supply of hex off the market. And for example, if the parity of Icosa to hex is broken through old HSIs, well, then we're probably not going to get new hex stakes coming through, and that's not as bullish for hex. I'm trying to remember too. There was I got to the point in a totally different way that I felt that the hex price was going to drop during the auctions, and I'm trying to remember exactly what mental gymnastics I did to get to that exact point.
You think it's a reverse FOMO play?
I think it had to do with arbitrage opportunities and the effects of that. And if I think of exactly what it was, I'll try to tell you guys. It's slipping my mind how I thought that was going to play out.
Well, if you reverse it to the other end, you know, we had a bullish hedron situation. I was seeing higher highs.
Oh,
higher
I know
highs.
what it was.
I got my eye on this hedron, and then boom, you know, like it gets a little lower, and then hex hops one leg up. Everyone swaps over. Like the whole trade. I'm gonna let you go though.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Here's another point to think about that when you're considering like diverted buy pressure directly from hex off the market, and that's assuming that the dollars that are going into this auction would have hit the hex price anyways. So like some people are really only participating because they feel they can get a deal relative to the market price. And if that deal wasn't present, that money may never have gone to the hex price chart anyways.
Yes.
So that's something to consider too.
But that's going to be a small portion of the totality, right? So yes, I completely agree. But some portion of that would have entered the market anyway. And now if it couldn't enter the market, yes. However, on the counter side, right? Because I'd like to try to at least pretend that I look at things from both sides to gain an understanding for myself, like independent.
At least to pretend he's not a hedron, fucking like Spain.
But on the positive side, there's 4 grown ass fucking men talking about this, which is increasing exposure.
Yes, I agree.
In the marketplace, and if there is excitement, Maxim brought up a good point earlier, and that's what I was running through my head. When people get FOMO the best, meaning the feverish energy is high, is after day one when I'm like, hey guys, I just took $2,000 and now I have $8,000 because I bought these HSIs for nothing, put them through Icosa and sold that shit, right?
Yes.
So I think that the energy that is created in terms of these conversations could actually spark or stimulate greater demand for hex.
I agree.
So I was curious to hear both of yours. Let's transition to hedron, right? Because talking about Icosa, talking about hex,
And poly,
right? So this will be in the conversation too. Yeah, what do you think? Poly's going. We got poly going on. These auctions are going on. Like clearly, we're all excited talking about this stuff.
what do you guys see? Like, what do you guys see? Like, what do you guys think in your head? You don't have to be super uber bullish or super uber bearish.
Right.
So, like, what do you see in your general opinion? Like in a time like this with the current market, you know, the way it is, of course.
As far as price for
As far as
any one of those
HSI
things.
auctions, what kind of price action do you think will come, like relative to that kind of action in this stage of the market? Now, I know this is a complicated question. Like, this is not really fair to even ask someone, because I don't want you to be like pinned against anything. But you know, I can't stop thinking that hedron's bullish because there's so much upside and it's so new and all these things. But I wanted to know, like, the HSI auctions themselves, I cannot catch a beat on like what that will do to the market, like directly. Like, I can't see the people doing it yet, but I don't know. The question's kind of confusing.
Well, maybe a better way to think about this, because I think that we're biased in the sense of looking for reasons for shit to go up that we own, right? Like clearly. But or maybe a different way to look at this would be, what is the negative side for Hedron to not move and to stay the same price?
Mhm.
Well,
Whales dumping the price down, essentially. Like now that buy the rumor, sell the news kind of trade. So it's like, oh, the event's done, and so people with larger bags use anybody entering for the auction as exit liquidity, and that sell pressure overtakes whatever demand has been accumulated because of the auctions that are because of the opportunities the auctions are presenting. Now the funny thing is, it's that exact same thing is like also the reason why you could argue the opposite way. Not the exact same thing, but like using that same scenario, not the same scenario, using the same, like using the fact that for the first time, a pseudo liquidity pool is being created between Hedron and the T-share. Like that's nothing has ever been paired against the T-share directly in this way before in the history of Hex's existence. And so because this is the first time that that's happening, that's kind of a wild card in my opinion. Like I don't really know what that's going to bring. Sorry, go ahead, Maxim.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the what I currently see as the most likely reason for Hedron to go down is kind of what I was saying earlier. I could see bigger Hedron accounts looking to this time to sell because they recognize that otherwise the buy pressure should theoretically be high. And so I could see them. It's just another one of those unknowns that could come into the market.
I think the sell pressure's out. I don't think there's enough constant sell pressure at this point. I mean, what are we, 160 days into Hedron? All these dumpers have dumped. The price floored 15x up, and I'm just like,
yeah.
But think about it. The price floored 15x up and went sideways for 50 days.
Right.
Stuff.
It doesn't take a lot for some of these people to generate billions of Hedron. And it doesn't mean that they're going to have 100 billion necessarily still ready to dump. I think there absolutely are people that do. But if they're watching their account, they already dumped it, maybe the wrong time, maybe the right time. But in the meantime, they're accumulating more Hedron, and if they're not all for the project, then they're only for getting the value out of it in the short term. And this is when I would estimate that they're looking to sell. And so that would be the biggest pressure down on Hedron price that I'm aware of. Otherwise, I think most of the aspects are bullish. And for what it's worth, I can talk to you what I was trying to remember earlier of why I think the Hex price may actually have some downward pressure during the auctions. It's basically, if people are, let's just say for the average $10,000 HSI, if they're paying $7,000 in Hedron for that, you immediately have the potential for someone to buy $7,000 of Hedron with Hex and then instantly turn that into $3,000 profit on an HSI. If that makes sense. Like if the HSIs are going for less in Hedron than their value, people should be selling their Hex for Hedron and immediately giving it to the HSIs for more Hex than they started with. Which, in order to do that, they're selling down Hex to get Hedron. They're ending up with more Hex because it's coming from an HSI, not off Uniswap or wherever they would be buying. And
Can you walk me through that again?
Yes. Okay. So let's say that I'll try to do it the same way, and if I'll try to do it a different way if this still doesn't. This is not very clear. If there's $10,000 actual value HSIs, people
that means like a $10,000 Hex position that is
let's just say it that way. There's $10,000 worth of Hex in an HSI being bought with $7,000 worth of Hedron, and people see that happen. Why would they not take their Hex, turn it into Hedron, buy an HSI, end up with a 30% profit?
Because it's crazy.
Because and I don't know, but my thought would be that in order to do that, there's no sell pressure on Hex, right? It would be like, okay, so who would be those players? It would be people who own Hex, right? Or new people. They're like, oh wow, there's a 30% delta there. And if you think that something's wrong, please interrupt me. So if I was that player and I had Hex, then I would just run it through the HSI. Now, if I'm not the player and I'm somebody who does not own Hex, but I see that there's a 30% margin there, I'm like, okay, I want to buy Hex and go through these steps. But to do this, I'm just getting Icosa.
Oh,
right. So, right. Am I right? So if I'm outside of the market, I have USDC. I'm going to go buy Hex if I can get more money in Icosa, because I'm not going to be able to get that 30% margin because that's 90 days.
You're right. That's a really good point. Basically, another way that maybe is saying what you're saying is there's more ways to buy Hedron than with just Hex. And if Hedron's the thing that is the ultra valuable thing because it gets you more than its own innate value, it doesn't mean people have to be selling Hex to get that Hedron. They could be doing it with USDC. And I completely agree with you. This would be, you're right, this is a very specific use case. It's just maybe someone has a bunch of liquid Hex and they're looking at Hex for Hex, but they don't necessarily have to use that Hex to get the Hedron and get the extra Hex out of the Hedron. They could be using Icosa or whatever they want at the same time. I would assume they'd probably go in with USDC.
How do you think this plays out potentially, hypothetically, right? We come up to the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, right? We're, playing along and things are selling at maybe like, say, a 5 to 10% discount when you factor in $5 to $15 transaction fees because you have multiple steps.
Yes.
How do you think this potentially could play out if this is the case, right? Poly is going to should make the market more efficient, meaning they're not going to be selling at a discount, but the price of Hedron doesn't move. Like they're collecting money, right? They're Poly guys are collecting money, right? They're taking Hedron off the market, which is good for the price. But then say now it is efficient, but there's so much Hedron available that the prices are not moving in the first several days of Hedron. Or does that just seem like such a far-fetched idea? Like, USDC is going to unpeg. Not that's that seems maybe less unlikely. But what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know anymore.
Well, I think that's a real possibility. I think people have been looking forward to this time and buying Hedron for this use case. So the question is, how many people are gonna, in the last minute, decide to want more Hedron than they already have? And there's a real possibility that's not a large percentage of people, and they're just going to use the Hedron that they've already accumulated, and that's not going to be pushing the Hedron price up. And it kind of comes back to how much FOMO are we going to have? Like you're saying, how many people are going to be posting on Twitter or random places, or even just looking at the blockchain? This guy paid this for this. How much is that going to excite? Like, wow, I don't want to miss out on this. It's worth me trading USDC for Hedron to take advantage of this myself.
And that FOMO might not even happen now. Maybe because we're in a bear market, we don't have that kind of attention yet, like attention capital quite yet. Maybe it's once Hex starts going viral, getting picked up more, we're in a greater bull market, and then you retroactively look back and it's like, whoa, look at these deals that these people got 6 months, a year and a half ago, and look how much they're worth now. Let's see what that system's doing today in this hypothetical future, and then that's where maybe that we see some of that like really increased FOMO that you're talking about.
No, I agree. So the reason I thought of this is because I think what Maxim was saying in regards to the people who wanted to get involved in this, like who have some type of forethought, like probably already bought Hedron, or they want to continue to increase the size of the position, or continuing to purchase. And if you're at that point where there's enough of those people who have done that, then obviously you don't see necessarily the price would move substantial. And I thought of this because when you look at Deci, right? You brought up Maximus, but you look at Deci, right? Deci is trading at like 0.01% premium relative to Hex, and sometimes it's at a discount, right? Because there were so many people that got into Deci thinking that they're going to get a 50% premium, which then eliminates the premium that could have been gotten if a smaller pool.
Sam, it seems like those two things are almost inverse. Like when they think the premium's coming, it ain't coming. But when we don't know it's coming, the math shapes out. It's very interesting because it's like the math. I'll just use Zen because it just happened. But like Zen came out on Ethereum, day one minters 20x their purchase. On Binance, everyone went day one with the mint. They all got nuked. When I say nuked, they just lost their gas fee. But like, you know what I mean? They got nuked as far as percentage. So sometimes the inherent understanding of these things really actually changes the dynamic of the ratios. It's pretty crazy.
What do you guys think about that? Because it's happened. We're like watching this play out with Deci, and if you watch the premium for Maxi, the token Maxi, compress, right? It's been compressing, and we're at like maybe a 50% premium where it was over a 2x, and that has compressed a lot. So what are your thoughts? Sloth, you want to take this one first?
Thoughts on specifically the Maxi and like the perpetual premiums, or like how like people's perceptions of what's going to happen may shape the way things actually happen.
All of that in relation to Hedron.
Yeah. I mean, so I think some of the reasons why we're seeing fluctuations in the premiums and the perpetuals and Maxi is probably because we have now like multiple assets to split capital across. And so like when there was only one only one pooled stake, like everybody went in there and got that. Now it's divvied up, but I think there are justifiable reasons for why they chose to do that in terms of flexibility for pooled staking. So like the trade-off seems appropriate, in my opinion. Maybe I'm not really sure how to answer the question in terms of like what's going to be happening with these auctions. Because mostly because everyone's saying I don't know what's about to happen. like no one has a really clear idea of
most of the time it's like it's going to the moon no matter
what. The only thing I think people like generally agree on is that like Icosa is probably going to dump and lose its peg, so maybe it'll like go skyrocket for crazy premiums if we're going by. It's going to do the exact opposite of whatever everybody's expecting.
I would love that. That would be so bullish, in my opinion, for the project.
Yeah, that'd be so crazy.
101 too. You're so right.
But yeah, like it's so like you ask 5 different people and then they'll each tell you a different thing and then argue in the same breath for the opposite thing to happen. Like I've done that this stream too. So I think it's a little harder to measure sentiment for the auctions outside of just long-term bullishness for the project in general. Like I don't know, you have the Hex model thing pulled up, but if you look like how many T-shares are coming out daily, like it's pretty crazy on the thing.
I'll give a little prediction. I think Hedron's oversold. I think there's nothing left. I think it's uber bullish for Hedron. I almost think there's and I'm not saying what will happen to the other things. I don't know. I do assume that there will be a lot of, if you see any bullish sentiment within Hedron, you're going to see swaps between Liquid Hex and Hedron just to ride some of that up as a freebie, whether they're doing it right or not, because people do that in the reverse direction as well, even though the asset has much more liquidity, which is kind of like how you would not want to do that. So it's interesting to note, but I think Hedron's oversold. And people can say whatever they want in the chat. You give me all the numbers about how many dumpers there are. They had it dumped already. It did a 20x. And then it went sideways for 50 days. So you let me, I've watched dumpers. They sell right when that thing has any juice on it. And they've already sold. And I'm saying that there will be sellers, of course. And there will be all that, but the buy side will be stronger.
Yeah, the Hedron chart ate like a $200,000 market sell, like not too long ago, like an hour or so ago. Like it's great, and like it did, like the price didn't dump like that, like it wicked, like obviously down to like 3,400, but like it's back at like 3,500 right now. Like it just ate up like almost $250,000 like that.
And Sam highlighted those two things. The buy side on Hedron had more users.
Maxim, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I think this loft might be actually onto something, and you had mentioned around 25% earlier. When these auctions take place, given that we're talking about on whether we participate as individuals or not, but there's a poly, contract that is going to be participating, is going to make it slightly more efficient market. That would be logical to think that, meaning the amount of hedron that is burnt goes up drastically. And if we understand that consensus means that probably the premium gets taken away as soon as you get consensus on something, if we utilize the DESI example there, and then you take that same framework and you apply it, what is the consensus here? That we all kind of maybe think it might be challenging for Icosa. And then Sloth is like, well, what if that's the shit that runs because of what Max
and the low liquidity? Remember how little it takes.
You were just saying that.
Because of the Maxi project not taking advantage of the HSIs. Is that partly what you're saying? The fact that they're not using that tool.
So Sloth is like, there's a boatload of T shares that are coming out. Okay, so you translate the boatload into like hedron shares, right, or tokens. So that means that because of poly, whether it's bringing in new people to just be aware of it, whether it's capturing the money, so now it's just done efficiently, the average discount, if you could say this is going to take place on a HSI, has just gone up, right? It's not going to be a 46% discount. Maybe it's a 20%, maybe it's 8%. We don't know, but the average, it's not going to be as big of a discount.
Right.
You had mentioned, I think, a 25%. If there's a trillion.
Yes, if a trillion, and CryptoSloth probably knows this a lot better than me, but I've estimated that if a trillion hedron is burned, it's going to roughly look like a 25% ROI in the Icosa pool.
And then think about that. What if that's the case? So you have the sell pressure, right? We all talked about the sell pressure on Icosa, but what if it's actually like a 3 or 4 or 6 trillion that's burned?
Yeah, which is completely speculation, and within the realm of possibility. And you would think theoretically that would increase the desire for Icosa because you're getting all this yield for it. I don't think people are thinking that far ahead. I think they're going to be reactive, and I think, for example, people are spending money, if at all, on hedron for poly. How many people are and some people are buying Icosa now because they see there's going to be yield. How many people are going to have funds available to meaningfully buy up the Icosa when the price drops going through the HSIs? And I'm also looking at how many HSIs there are. It's a lot. Like relative to the existence of this project, I think it's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for people to quantify the value in these HSIs and how little of them have to go through that buyback to completely obliterate the Icosa price. Like, we're going to need a lot of buy pressure.
But just remember, just with the obliteration of that side, the one last point about the liquidity is I'll mention is because I just experienced this with some other stuff that I was playing with, not really doing anything serious. There's no liquidity, meaning no one with real money. And when I say real money, somebody that would want to sell something for more than $10,000. Like, they're not going to do something unless they get a 10 grand, at least no slippage, 10 grand, something like that. Sam, that's like a lot of people. Like, I don't even sell stuff on Ethereum very often, to be quite frank. So remember, everyone with actual wealth, and I'm not like degrading anyone at all. This is just kind of how I see it. With actual wealth, with real wealth, would see 6.23% slippage and say, hell no. And that's so true, though, because I do it myself. I don't even have money like that. I really don't. Like, and I'm like, dude, 6% slippage, please, God have mercy. I ain't doing that.
I would hope that's the case. But
Maxim, you also have to remember that the opposite is true in low liquidity assets. So like if they dump it and the price goes down a lot, then like the rebound can be just as fast. The velocity does go both ways.
I think it just depends because there is so much value in the HSIs.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily have to save up or something to dump that value, where people have to actually have funds in their wallet. So one is like ready and available to be dumped, where the other one has to have some kind of almost like proactive thought process to it, at least as I'm seeing it. And I don't want to pretend like I'm arguing for this just because I want people to have considered it. I don't want to say that I know this is going to happen, which I kind of feel like I'm pushing too hard.
Not at all.
But-
That's a great point. Go ahead.
But yeah, I just see the fact that these HSIs are there. That's a fact. Even if they're bid with a minimum bid in Hedron, they could still be dumped for the Icosa. How much funds are available to buy up Icosa, and depending on even, I don't know, there's a lot of things that can happen. And it's a real question for me. And I also feel that if HSIs aren't used, like I would love to see as many of these HSIs go through the HSI buyback as possible, because it's going to initiate, people are going to be able to look forward to, again, 90 days later, a bunch of auctions. If that parity is broken, then the only reason that you would go through there is to get Icosa. But if the parity is broken so much, you can buy Icosa off the market for less than the HSI. Then there's still not a lot of incentive to. It's an interesting paradigm, I guess. But go ahead.
That's what I was talking about. Is that where it flips to Hedron? Sorry, is that where it flips to the Hedron piece to get rid of something? Where to take an advance on a 15-year is more profitable, depending on how far down. If it does break, right? Like if Icosa does break down, right, and it's at a 36% premium, but I have a 15-year tax stake that I could go through and take an advance on it, and I only have to have a 25% discount. Plus, I have the optionality that if I wanted to buy that back, I could myself.
I think it's important to also remember before you guys continue, is that Icosa has a lot of dynamic pairs. So I think the one thing that is important to notice about Icosa is that the guys that have Icosa that are willing to sell it, remember how I said I don't think they would dump it to ETH because it's just not much there, but they would swap it to their favorite coin Hex. But they would swap it to another coin Hedron, because whether or not there's as much liquidity in those pools, those ranges are always a lot more giving on those pairs that have that tightness to it to a degree. I mean, that bond already. So I think it's really interesting. That just popped into my head. I'm thinking, okay, so they're not going to sell the shit to ETH. They can't do it. But they would very likely swap it if there's low slippage to Hedron or Hex. Would you, Sam? You wouldn't mind that little deal right there for liquid.
I'm going to look up that pair right now and see what it's at.
And there won't be a lot of liquidity there, but it'll be different liquidity, Sam. You know how you pull up the pools and you're kind of like, hey, this is here. It's not really the amount of liquidity. It's where it's placed. And with those pairs that are bound together by a ratio already to a degree, the pairs are generally more solid because they know where the range is, where they're going to get most.
There is so much more liquidity between Hex and Icosa than there is exit liquidity. Say between
100%.
Icosa and USDC or Icosa and ETH. Like there's 110 right now currently on V3. 119 between Icosa and USDC. Versus between the Hex Icosa pair, there is where did I see that? I think it was 200.
I'll pull it up right here. So let me zoom in on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, here.
Hey guys, really quick, I do have to hop off, so I
Hey,
did
cool,
enjoy
man.
this awesome conversation, guys. It was nice to hang out with you guys again.
Hey, can we do this at 11 a.m. Eastern sometime with you two broskies? What you guys ever got 11 a.m. Eastern on your slot? I mean, come on.
It's 8 o'clock for me.
Yeah, if you could give me any day of the week that you're good on that, I'll set that up. Because
Only
I'm
Okay.
on
in the morning to watch this.
It's a good time
only
to
on
wrap
weekends,
this up.
so I'll let you know. But I'll just leave you guys with a final thought, like to everybody in the audience. Like I know we've been talking a lot of really complicated things, a lot of like in-depth strategies, like what's going to happen here, if this then that, how to profit on all of this. But like I think the really cool thing about the system is that even if you just do nothing, just stake the coins that you have, like value will be moving into your wallet that way. So like all of this stuff is cool to like, mentally go over and like, get excited about. But like, if you're trying to be conservative, you don't really want, or if you're scared about trying any of these things and losing your capital, all you have to do is stake and do nothing. And then value will naturally be transferred to you and your wallet, which is like one of the beautiful things about the system, I think.
Great point, Slot. Great point. This is actually a perfect time to wrap up.
Yep. This is a good time to wrap up, guys. I mean, this has been incredible. This was one of my favorite
I
shows.
appreciate both of you guys coming on.
Good conversation. My brain is going at it right now. I really feel like we switched as a unit. We all kind of flopped, we kind of moved. I was like, because you came out strong with the Icosa stuff, and me and Sam were talking about that exact same point to a degree. And Sam was kind of letting me know that same exact point. That's what he was thinking. It's been super interesting, guys. We missed Watson. We didn't talk too much about it. But I want to get an 11 a.m. show with you guys, whether that's next weekend or whatever. And maybe I'm going to do a marathon stream for the HSIs. Maybe not marathon, but I'm going to do a few hours stream, try to get people excited about that. Maybe we can talk again then. Any closing words, Maxim?
Thanks, guys. This was fun. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Maxim has an awesome radio voice, I feel like. So
Thank you.
I appreciate their insights and what you're doing for the community. Sloth, as always, I enjoy our conversations. Appreciate both of you guys. GRC, you want to take us out of here with some DeFi proof?
Yep, I'll take you out, guys. Remember, I'm going to drop, when the music's going, I'm going to drop both of their YouTube channels below. Make sure you go ahead and go over there and subscribe. And then I am going live in 29 minutes. The Pulse Chain Builders Open Forum Twitter space is going on. All the Pulse Chain builders are coming in. They all need to have a chat. We all know that there's controversy, say whatever you want about it. They need to have a chat. There's money flowing around. People need to talk. I'm excited for that one. That's in 29 minutes. If you don't have a Twitter, make sure you stay over here on YouTube. And our audio is actually better if you want to do that.
Yeah, and I'll be there.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God for that. And thank you guys so much. This has been a pleasure. I want more synergy in the space. I want more people talking. People can try and say that I'm evil or whatever this stuff is. Guys, I just want to have a good time with my friends and make the world a better place. And I will do that by myself in the corner, or I'll do it with a bunch of cool dudes. So we can all I like hanging out with guys, and especially on just because it's work, and we can all work together, to a degree, but we don't have to have financial incentives to exactly do everything, but we can make the world a better place. That's really what I want to do, at least at this time in my life, until I come out with crypto. Then I'm going to milk all you guys for everything you're worth. Guys, it's your boy. Have a great day. I'll be back in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Thank you guys both for being on.
You already know what time it is. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. 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 Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Got me some hedging, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way. Crypto in the morning.